Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Wynonna Earp as well as the latest episode of Outcast. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I quote a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Wynonna Earp, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Outcast. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Wynonna Earp. So, quite a few things to break down in this episode. First of all, there's a whole situation about Julian, Waverly's dad. Apparently he is an angel, because I didn't really comment in on last episode because I was like, maybe I thought, because Bobo kind of talks weird and stuff sometimes, so I was like, he always referred to Waverly as his angel, so I was like, I didn't know whether he really meant that or not, but the way Wynonna's kind of painting it, it's like, no, he legitimately meant that that she was an angel. Which I guess also makes sense why he would always constantly call Waverly one. But to be fair, that was kind of like the whole Wynonna thing, which is kind of interesting how that whole like time thing works. The whole like her vision quest ended up like affecting time. That's why he's so obsessed with Waverly. That kind of set things in motion. Because if it wasn't for him protecting Waverly, we saw a little bit of that last season when we found out that he poured her out the water, but now we find out there's a lot more to it because he was actually there when Waverly was born, and Michelle wasn't in condition to help in that situation because Julian had left. It's like, why'd he leave? We don't know. But Bobo ended up taking her to Ward, and Ward's like, get that thing away from me. So he knew that Julian wasn't human to begin with either. For him to call her a thing, it wasn't, not unless that was just him and his drunken thing, because it's like, oh, he knew about the affair and everything, but Bobo threatened him. It's like, you hurt Waverly in any shape or form, I will come back for you. Which makes me wonder, we also know like the whole like thing that went down that ultimately led to him and quote unquote Willa dying, quote unquote dying, was because he made his own deal and just things kind of went sideways. So, but I'm curious to find out more about this whole Julian thing. It's kind of interesting because at first Michelle kind of makes it seem like she doesn't really care for her because it is Christmas, which is interesting. I wasn't expecting it to be a Christmas episode, but it's just because it's Christmas time. It's like, oh, I'm spending this first time Christmas with my family. I don't want to ruin it. Like, I want to focus on it now, all that we have. But then there's a kid that went missing, but not just him, a whole bunch of people. Also, Jeremy shaved off his mustache because he thought Robin was like ghosting him. But it's like later on, he's like, oh my God, no, maybe Robin didn't, because he found out that this is all connected to Bullshar. And it's like, oh, maybe Robin got kidnapped. So it's like, yay, silver lining to it. It's like, he didn't stand me up. He just got kidnapped by a demon. Yes. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Because he was kind of down in the dumps about it and stuff like that. Because everyone else has got their business going on. Like, Waverly has Nicole. Doc has a situation with Kay and Wynonna. Even bringing up the whole, like, him and Rosita situation, which I'm surprised that has not circled back around this season so far. Rosita, but maybe that'll be a later surprise. Who knows? And once again, Wynonna's kind of got the whole Doc situation. So everyone's got somebody except for him, which is kind of sad. Which we did get introduced to a new character named Charlie. He's from the fire services. I thought he was I was like, the fact is like, oh, fire service. I was like, oh, like, it's like, no, they didn't say fireman. So he's definitely not replacing like the order from last season. The dudes that like, dolls like barbecued, in season 2's finale. Those dudes, those dicks. So, which reminds me of that joke Jeremy was saying. It's like, oh, Bullshar. Yeah. Huge dick. He is a huge dick. We don't know about this whole situation. Wynonna was kind of like, it might be kind of like a small thing. It's like, okay, we're doing that. But it turns, it's kind of interesting because Charlie, it turns out he knows more about it. At least he kind of pieces it together that this is all connected to the supernatural. Turns out he's not a Revenant, but it's like, or at least anything supernatural, because Peacemaker didn't react. But it's like, yeah, maybe it's just kind of like, yeah, I'm no idiot. I'm kind of piecing this all together. So there's that. But I feel like there might be a little bit more to that. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. Maybe that's just kind of furthermore filling the ranks of a team former Black Badge, So, because I think that's kind of a nice element of this episode. It's the complications between Wynonna and Doc, because of the whole like, oh yeah, find out you're married situation, and just kind of like Wynonna letting it bother her and everything, especially because Kate's not making it easier, because she's like, oh yeah, throwing stuff kind of in Wynonna's face. And then there's the whole situation of like finding out, oh yeah, I've been a vampire the entire time. Doc's like, wait, what? She's like, literally all the times I've been like, I'm a vampire. Let me bite you. And he's like, I thought that was kind of like, like a role play or something like that. It's like, the fact is that I got this lady to replace me to be known as Big Nose Kate. Like I got someone else. It's like, no, I thought that's just so you could hide your face. It's like, no, because, vampires can't take photos because they don't pop up in reflections and stuff like that, which I think is such an interesting detail that she has been a vampire the entire time. It's like, I was like, oh, you just happened to, like, oh, how serendipitous. It's like, nope, she was been alive even back then because she knew Doc was dying and she didn't want to see him like that, especially as someone who has internal life. I'm sure that kind of bothered her a little bit. Just because it's like seeing the person you love dies. Like she's probably seen it many, many times. I mean, granted, we still don't know actually how old she is, but hey, you never ask a lady her age, right? But then she found out that Doc was dead. Granted, she didn't know he was thrown down, the whole being immortal and then was thrown down a well thing. So, because the thing is between him and Winona get more complicated because he's like, the fact of the matter is I have a stronger connection with you. Yeah, me and Kate are married, but the fact of the matter is we share a bond that I don't have with Kate. We had a child together. She's like, I don't know what to do with you. He's like, just tell me you love me. And it's like they had kissed too and everything, which she doesn't say, which it seems like later on it's more so a situation of because she's afraid to, because she says that later on, like she doesn't deserve Doc. That's why she kind of hooks up with Charlie, because for her, it's like, I don't want no strings attached. I mean, to be fair, the same thing happened with Dolls too. It's like she never really, especially like there's always been this back and forth between her and Doc and a little bit with Dolls, but she never ever really told anyone how she really felt because ultimately she's scared I'm sure of people even though they're part of this tight-knit group, if she gets closer to Doc, maybe she's afraid he'll break her heart or kind of let her down, or she'll do something to kind of screw things up. I think it's what she's more so afraid of. And sadly, all this does is just push Doc closer to Kate. In fact, she ends up turning him later on because he's like, go ahead. I mean, for one, it gives him his immortality back, but I don't think that's something he gave up caring about after season 2, because the only thing he cared about going forward was Alice, their daughter, and this family that they built. But she's like, Kate's like, I don't want to take your family away. It's like, stop bullshitting around. I know this is what you came here for. This is all what you wanted. And we see her change him. So I'm curious to see what that causes the dynamic between them even more, because now he's immortal. The fact of the matter is everyone around him will grow old and die, because we don't know how the whole vampire situation works in the series, because it's actually kind of interesting. I don't know if you know this detail, because I picked this up like a while back, because I was reminded, because I actually looked it up a little while, I guess fairly recently in some regard, was in the comic books that this show was originally based on, Bobo and stuff were vampires, I think. Like, I don't think it was like the whole Revenant demon thing. It was like, no, it was a group of vampires. I get the feeling like this series has gone through multiple revamps. Maybe it hasn't. Like, I think it started off as a one limited series, but I feel like this character and story has popped up in other avenues, comic book wise. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's the kind of inkling I got, but maybe that's not the case. But the whole vampire thing I think is kind of interesting, because that circles back. This is the first time there are those demons that popped up. I think there were Revenants that popped up in season 1. They might not have been Revenants. The one that Bobo summoned, the two ladies, they were kind of like vampires. Maybe they were vampires. I don't remember them expressly calling them vampires, but maybe they were. Nevertheless, I guess I'm just interested to see what that whole Doc situation ends up being. It turns out that once again, Bulshar is back to collecting all the different families. What he's doing exactly, we don't know. It seems like whatever he did do the Robin, but we're not really circulating around that now. I guess he's okay, or maybe he got interrupted, because Charlie and Winona kind of went in shooting people down, as well as just him chopping people down with an axe. It doesn't look like they were anything. I don't know whether they were supernatural or not. They were all the people that were in there taking care of things. They didn't look like they were kind of possibly regular people. To be fair, we don't know what they were looking like underneath, but still, it seems like he does the seed thing again, like he did to that vampire dude in the first episode, and then pouring green stuff in them. Maybe this has something to do with all those trees, like the one that grabbed Robin. Like I brought up last episode, it kind of makes sense, because it seems like Bulshar has control over Earth. That's kind of his special ability. But beyond that, like, we don't know whether that's him turning, like, all those trees and stuff, what if they're living trees because they were living people? Like, we saw that tree, was it not last episode, but the episode before last, it had a person inside of it. Maybe that's what it is. The tree sprout from inside the person and then consumes them, and they become like living trees feeding off the human that's stuck inside of them or they were born from. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe eventually Robin ends up getting turned into a tree. Maybe. We saw it happen to some other dude prior to him, but we don't know what happened to that dude. It's all about serving him. And like I said, those trees serve him. So maybe it isn't necessarily like trees in general he controls. Maybe it's specific trees. Like he has to put those seeds in them. But maybe that just gives him more control over those particular plants. I don't know. But it's all about like being betrayed by the families, because basically they set him up so that Wyatt could track him down and ambush him and put him down. So that's, once again, that's what he's going after, all these particular families from Purgatory. He doesn't want them dead necessarily. He wants them to be alive, I guess, to serve him as a means of punishing him, turn into people that betrayed him into unwilling allies in his vendetta, I guess. I don't know. All the while, you had that moment with Nedley in this episode I thought was kind of interesting, because for the first time, from prior to the show, I mean, this season, like, Nedley's kind of been on top of everything. Like, he's kind of held his shit together he kind of had to for such a long time. But this episode, it shook him because he froze for the first time in ever. Like, obviously, we've seen him come to face with a lie. He was literally tortured by fake Mercedes last season, which, once again, we still don't know what that's about. Because even Winona brought that up about Kate. It's like, you're staying in my friend's place. It's like, once again, I don't know what happened to that. Like I said, the last time we saw her, she was in the hospital. She might have died or something, like off screen or something like that. I don't know. It might not. Maybe that's something, like I said, something that'll kind of pop back up later on. But nevertheless, so he's going through a lot. But for him, I think it finally just kind of set in after so many years. And, you know, he's getting older, and it's just becoming too much after seeing Lonnie getting eaten. And then binging Pretty Little Liars, which I think is funny, just because my niece is both my nieces are kind of currently binging that on Netflix. And I guess maybe that's me doing a subtle plug. I just thought it was kind of interesting. It's like, oh, you brought up Pretty Little Liars. I've been seeing bits and pieces of that, like, more and more lately, just because that's all they've been kind of really watching lately. I just think that's kind of funny. But, nevertheless, so for him, the fact is he couldn't really take action this episode, and the fact is that it was Nicole handling everything. When Nedley was kind of shut down, Nicole was the one responding to people and stuff like that. She's the one that was like, oh, we need to get people out there searching the woods, trying to find any clues. She kind of got everything in motion. And so because of that, like, Nedley's like, okay, you're sheriff now. I got to step down. I got to retire. So beyond that, I'm curious to see what Nedley does from now on. He's just going to be a person of Purgatory. Because he said something interesting, because it's like, is it really better to bring that boy back home, Purgatory, where stuff just happens, terrible stuff just happens because of Purgatory, the Ghost River Triangle, all this supernatural crap? Like I said, it was finally just kind of wearing his nerves down. So then there's also the situation with Michelle. She actually goes to Bobo and ask him about Julian. Because I think hearing the conversation with Winona about everything finally kind of, like, I think she tried to pretend like it didn't bother her, but I think she wants answers about the Julian thing. Possibly she might know more about it than she's letting on about to Waverly. I mean, I'm curious, like, what went down to make her decide. Because it was like, no, he was someone that was a complete opposite of Ward. He was honest, he was kind. So it's like, why would she hide anything? So why would he go? Is he really an angel, or is there something more to it? Like, what's going on? I mean, is that what happens? Like, I mean, I guess that would, it also depends on what storyline you go by, but, like, would that technically make Waverly a Nephilim? And I say that because it's like, well, you take something like Supernatural, for example. A human and an angel coming together makes a Nephilim. Obviously, Nephilims can also be half human, half angel, half demons, if you go by, like, the Ninja Theory Devil May Cry game, because that was how Nephilims worked in that. Like, it always changes. More often than not, I feel like it's usually, like, human, half angel type of thing, because there was a whole, like, limited series called Fallen with Paul Wesley in it. So one of the first things I ever saw him in was that. Yeah, it kind of dealt with that whole situation. So I think that's typically how that goes when it comes to Nephilim, but maybe that's not the case. It's just two examples of half human, half angel. Like I said, because Jolene referred to her as a changeling, so maybe that's a different name for them. Like what that mean? Like when I think changeling, I think of someone who can literally change shape and be something else entirely. I mean, maybe that's kind of what Jolene was. Maybe to some extent, Waverly can do that too. She just hasn't really tapped into her power. She hasn't really kicked into her supernatural side. You know, we'll kind of have to wait and see on that side of things too. So, but the fact is, like Michelle would be so desperate to find information that she let Bobo out of anyone out. Like that's what I'm curious. Like, why would you do that? I'm curious, like, what he's gonna do. I mean, there's the whole Winona thing. Winona might try and put him down. I'm sure he won't let that. But to be fair, I'm sure he's going to try and be there for Waverly. And maybe that's why Michelle is going to be so okay with him, because like he cares so much for Waverly and tries to protect her. That's why she's like, oh, he's a better option than nothing at all. I'm curious. I don't know. Maybe she feels like once she gets the answer she needs, Winona can put him down. Or maybe we'll see something where we see Michelle and Bobo adventures type of thing going on. We'll just kind of have to wait and see on that front. This episode left a lot of stuff open. Like, I'm curious to see where kind of, everything goes. Like I said, the whole Doc being a vampire thing, where does that go from here on out? There's the whole Bobo situation. What about the whole Charlie thing? Like, whether it's just like, oh, is he supposed to be here just to be a love interest type of thing? Or is Charlie going to turn into something more? Once again, what happens to Robin? What happens to that whole seed and green slime goo? What does that turn into? Which would be a shame if something happened to Robin, especially because him and Jeremy taking steps forward, they kissed and everything, and then just like, you saw Jeremy kind of falling head over heels because he's like, whoa. It's kind of interesting because he was so obsessed with Doc last season and dolls, but now it's more so like, no. He's found his own love, so he's not really worried about anybody else. So also, what are things going to be like now that Nicole is kind of, sheriff and everything? That means she's also going to have to handle a lot more of the stuff that Nedley kind of took care of. And kind of going back to the Charlie thing, he is kind of going to be associated with this thing by proxy because he knows about the supernatural stuff and the fight and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see what Bulshar's plans are ultimately. And what Nicole plays in all that too, because let's not forget, Bulshar's ring kept coming back. And what's interesting too is it hasn't circled back around, but Doc has Bulshar's ring the last time we saw it. So he's definitely going to be coming. Maybe that's even more reason for Doc to do that, because for him, it's like, oh, Kate actually needs him. He feels like Winona doesn't need him. So he just wants to feel needed and important to somebody, because he just feels like he can't do anything to Winona. Maybe he feels like doing whatever he can to fill that empty hole in his heart. It's kind of interesting because obviously like Wyatt was his best friend, kind of, they had their falling out, left him a little broken too, like it left Wyatt broken, and now you kind of have it kind of history almost repeating itself in a different manner, but at the same time a similar manner with him and Winona. It's kind of like history repeating itself all over again. Interestingly enough, I'm guessing that's kind of interesting. The whole him becoming immortal, selling his soul to the devil, is what made Wyatt turn his back on him in the first place. Might once again see the whole repeat of that. We'll just have to wait and see. And now moving on to this week's episode of Outcast. Quite a few things went down that we got to break down. First of all, there's the whole, like, I thought it was kind of interesting in the moment, because obviously it's Hoon Lee. So I'm like, oh my God, that's the doctor, Dr. Park, who's working with Sydney. It's like, oh, you're operating with Kyle. It's like, yeah, you definitely want to keep Kyle alive, don't you? But then like the whole like, oh yeah, I decided to tell you he's dead. I'm like, oh, you guys are so full of crap, because there's no way you're going to let your little prized possession, that being Kyle, slip through your fingers like that. No way in hell. And, because Allison, like, and I think it was kind of interesting because obviously, like, the worlds kind of collide on many different fronts, because Allison's kind of falling apart because, like, for her, she blames herself because she never got to apologize to Kyle for everything. And she also blames herself because she's like, none of this would have happened. If she had left that facility sooner, maybe she could have stopped Kyle from getting mixed up in whatever he got mixed up in. Because obviously it turns out they did the same thing to her, what they did with the whole Megan situation. They didn't, the whole Mark thing, they kind of lied and made it seem like it was something else. So, but I thought it was kind of this weird, bittersweet moment between Anderson and Amber, where he's like, oh yeah, I give you chips. Like, my dad kind of wouldn't want me eating so much chips. But he makes kind of, what was it? She said exactly like, He kind of lets it slide a lot of times too. But she's like, "Are you worried about my dad?" He's like, "No." But she's like, "I wish more people would taught me that like a don't." And he's like, "Honestly, I'm scared." And she's like, "You don't have to be. While dad's recovering, I'll take his spot because I can do what he can do." And it's like, wow, because that's crazy. And because Anderson, like, there's probably part of him that's like, well, she could fill this role, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want to put this, like, what it did to Kyle, it threw his life upside down. He didn't want the same thing to happen to Amber. I mean, even though it's already happening, just like, because Amber's younger than Kyle was when this all, like, his life kind of spiraled into what it was when it first happened with his mom and everything. Which is an interesting thing, I guess, because he was in that borderline world between life and death. Or maybe it was just kind of like some subconscious thing. But when he saw his mom, I thought it was kind of nice because his mom was kind of like, no, you don't have to blame yourself. Because like his mom was like that for a good while. And the reason why she stayed like that in that chaotic state was because she hadn't really equal out because she was still fighting it. She didn't just accept it. And I think that was kind of like the big thing in that situation because she kept fighting because she wanted to say who she was for Kyle's sake. So what happened was she blames herself because it's like, because I wanted to stay with you, I fall. But then it shifts over to his mom being who she was before and she's grabbing on him and there's that light coming out of it. I wonder is that like supposed to be like a literal representation of like what makes him what he is? Like, or is that supposed to represent his soul? Like what that whole thing is like, was that just kind of like a nightmare or was there some reality to that? It seemed like more so it was a nightmare with everything that kind of went down, just kind of his subconscious kind of punishing him for everything. But yeah, I like the whole situation with him and Sydney, him like messing Sydney up bad, almost getting his hands on it. But I think it's because Sydney is so intact there, it probably wouldn't be possible for Kyle to pull him out at this point in time. So that's why he can probably fight Kyle off a little bit more, probably because he's also stronger too. So because like there's so much that went down because Allison was still kind of in denial about everything, but then Megan sat down and explained it to her. She's like, no, you're crazy, you're part of this too. And Megan's like, literally, I would not have believed it until I saw the things that went down last episode. It's like, yeah, she got she got front seat roles to that whole situation. And then she explains the Mark situation. It's like, it wasn't a car accident, it was me. And then, eventually Anderson comes into this because he ends up visiting the lady and all those other people, which her name is Dakota. I don't know if they brought that up before. What's interesting is, like, the entire time, I kept thinking that the person who saved them, their messiah, was Kyle's dad, which it could possibly be. But then it clicked in my head. It's like, right. Those were 30 years ago, which is also saying a lot too, because it's like, because I was like, yeah, not once did Kyle or his dad doing that seem to leave a mark, but whoever this was, it left a mark. And now I'm starting to think about it. That must mean whoever their Messiah is, maybe it actually is Kyle's dad. Because Helen had that whole plan about boosting Kyle's dad to make him stronger, so it'd make the signal stronger, so it'd make the merge happen a little bit faster, kind of be the beacon that kind of draws a lot of them near, kind of they find their way here a lot easier. So he might be the Messiah that we know about. Maybe he's not. I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen Kyle's dad since those 30 years, so he could still be alive. And maybe because he's so powerful, because those people, they're definitely, I mean, maybe some of them are like 30 years old or so, but it's like the mark seems too fresh for that to be. So it might just be because he's so powerful, which is an interesting thing, but probably because the more powerful you become, the more likely you're able to rip those things out no matter how long they've been in there. You might be even able to like separate them no matter how much they're bound together. That might be what happened to those people. They were so far gone that when he used the power, it literally forcibly ripped them and left a mark. At least in Dakota's case. So to me, that's kind of interesting because that might be something we see later on with Kyle and Amber as their powers grow, especially around each other. Their powers are probably that much stronger. So that's what I'm kind of like, that's where my mindset kind of goes about that. So like I said, we still don't know who the Messiah is, but we do see Dakota texting him about Kyle because she found out from Anderson about Kyle being dead. Because a lot of those people are a lot like, they're not just like they're people from all over, because it turns out, and it's something that Sydney kind of implies, like there are more people like Kyle, and that's kind of interesting because I thought like what was happening to Kyle specifically was just to his family. I thought like it ran from in his blood, like his dad to him to Amber. Turns out that's not the case. It seems like there might be other people like them, which I'm thinking that's what that boy is about. Because I kept being like, oh, is that boy one of them? Is he not? Is he just food? The fact of the matter is that Sydney was like, oh yeah, this boy was going to help Eren change fast, but Eren thought of him as competition, like, oh, you're going to transform before me and stuff like that, because he's so in such a hurry to prove himself, because it's like, oh, I killed the mayor for you, so it's like, yeah, I'm ready to go, but he's kind of like, you need to slow your roll. But he ended up killing the kid, and I was wondering like what it was. I was like, is he the head honcho or something like that? And the way he was like, no, he would have helped you got transformed fast. So I was like, he's a beacon like Kyle is. So he was most likely had the gift as well. I mean, to be fair, we never saw him actually touch Sydney. And he's the one that actually warned Allison about like, oh, they're coming for your daughter, because he knew that she was like him as well and had the gift. So there are multiple people. So maybe there are multiple outcasts, or is Kyle like a specific breed? Like is whatever runs in his family specific? Or, but the fact is there are other people, maybe the abilities kind of manifest themselves a little bit differently. Maybe that's what they all kind of have, or maybe there's something more to it. I don't know. That's where my mind immediately goes, but I'm assuming it's like they can all do that. So that's kind of interesting. Like, whereas before it seemed like there was only one with Kylo and then eventually Amber, now it seems like, oh, his dad was one, and now there's multiple other people out there, like this Messiah, for instance. And this kid potentially could have been one too. And in turn, Eren ended up screwing up his whole deal, which is kind of interesting. In an effort to try and prove himself, he ended up screwing himself over, and it was just the final straw for Sydney. So it seems like it's implied heavily that Sydney finally killed him, which is kind of interesting, because like Eren was such a douchebag, trying so hard to prove himself. He killed his mom and all that, and it turned out to be for nothing, because now you're dead too. I'm assuming like the fact is he has a knife and everything, either he's just going to cook something, or that's implying he's going to slice up Eren's body, which is interesting considering the fact is that he was trying to get Eren to slice up what was Evelyn's husband? Wasn't it Evelyn's husband? Yeah, like slice that dude's body up. So maybe that's what that. I mean, the knife and everything kind of makes me imply that. So that was kind of an interesting development. Another thing to go on about is the fact is that like the moment I was like, oh man, they're never going to find out about it. I was like, Anderson doesn't know about Park, but he does. He only knows about Park by name. He's like, whoa, what did you say the doctor's name? Park. That's the same dude that attacked Kyle. He works for Sydney. I'm like, yeah. Because he wanted, I'm sure he wanted Amber as well as Megan and Allison to kind of meet, you know, and they're called the Lighthouse. I kept calling them the Beacon, and similar things, sure, but like their name is the Lighthouse. Like I said, it still kind of represents the same thing, but it's like, because it's like, yeah, this fight's still going on, because Giles has given up. Because for him, it's like, you know, Rose is trying to talk to him. It's like, no, this ain't the man I love and married. The fact of the matter is this fight isn't over. But for him, it's like, it's actually coming off the other side of that now. Now also seeing that the person he thought of as a good friend, the Mayor Owen, ended up finding out he was behind all this. And it's like, because for him, he lost hope, because it's like, we thought we had some kind of control in this. And it's like from the very beginning, top to bottom, everything in this town was already being controlled. We don't control nothing, you know. We can't even protect ourselves in this situation, which Anderson calls him out for, and Rose does too, because it's like, would you just sit back and accept this? But it's just because Giles feels like their last hope was Kyle. Maybe finding out that Kyle's alive might change things. Maybe it won't, because he might be so broken right now that he's not willing to listen to anybody, because he feels like this fight's so one-sided. Like, how can you win? We don't know who our enemy is, and even when we do know who our enemy is, the fact of the matter is they're pouring into this world. There's nothing we can do about it. So that's more incentive for Anderson. Like I said, and I talked about that before, like the Lighthouse being Kyle's little army of people who know about what's going on. Especially, I mean, now we know they're kind of this Messiah's army with this whole situation. So that's kind of fascinating all on its own. But what's really interesting is while Kyle is making his escape in the hospital, Amber could sense him. She followed the signs, even going all badass and grabbing onto Park to stop him. And then they get the keys and open the door, and there's Kyle. It's like, you know, they're like, oh my God, we thought you were going. He's like, I could never do that, because he's like, I can't die because you guys would still be in so much danger. I have to be here to protect my family. He's like, but how did you find me? And it's like, Amber found him, and she's like, fireflies can see other fireflies. I'm like, so does that mean that they can sense other people with gifts? Because the fact of the matter is, they said it themselves, like, there was someone else there that's like Kyle, and they were stronger, and so that's what pulled that demon to Giles in particular, because the beacon was never more brighter. So it's like someone else was there. So the other Messiah was potentially there, or maybe unknowingly, maybe Kyle's dad was there, you know? Or maybe there's someone else in the town in general. I mean, we know Sydney had that kid, so maybe that boy was nearby or someone else entirely. Because, yeah, Amber wasn't there at that time, so it definitely wasn't her. So it's like, who else in there? I would assume it was Dakota, but I mean, I feel like with her having to market everything, there's no way she could have been. So it had to be like Kyle's dad or the Messiah were there nearby. Why didn't they stick around? I don't know. But that's definitely kind of an interesting thing. Maybe that, maybe it's just because of their connection. Maybe people of their kind, like Kyle and Amber, can only find each other, like because they're fireflies of the same family. They can, or maybe it isn't. Like, obviously, that's shown because it's little by little, but we are seeing their powers grow because her being able to do that, like that's something Kyle's never done before. But maybe that's something we can see happen in the future, like them finding other people like them. Like I said, it's like we're building up this army against this battle against all of this. Real kick in the teeth was the whole situation with Rose. Oh my God, her killing Evelyn like that took me by surprise. I think for her, it's because it's like Giles isn't going to do anything, so I'll step up and do it. Like, I know who's possessed, and so I'll start taking them out. I'll fight this battle, even if I had to do it on my own. Maybe she feels like if she does it, she'll inspire Giles to kind of finally like step back up again. But for now, it seems like, I mean, that's what that's implying, which let's see how that ends up turning out. I mean, it's crazy now because everyone is in on this. Megan now knows the truth. Allison now knows the truth, especially because it's like now everything's kind of like you might have had some doubts before, but after seeing the thing with Park and Amber, and now the whole thing with Kyle, them covering up and faking his death, it's like, dude, so the entire family is together again. Obviously it's going to still be that thing of like, you got to recognize what happened to you wasn't your fault. It was everyone else. Like, it was something else possessing you, like in Megan's case, and so Allison's case, so maybe she can start taking the steps going forward to forgiving herself because it wasn't her at the time. And and Amber knows it, so you don't have to blame yourself anymore. But yeah, once again, it's kind of interesting because now the roles have flipped when it came to Anderson and Giles, because Anderson was so kind of lost last season, kind of at the beginning of this season, because he felt like he didn't really know the way. But now it's like Giles is kind of in that state, and I don't know. I'm very interested to see where this goes now, because now that Kyle and Amber are closer together and probably will be always closer together, that probably means that the beacon's going to be that much brighter. I mean, granted, things have kind of screwed over Sydney's plan in multiple ways, because it's like, well, now that the kid's been taken care of, that's probably, I mean, for one, that was more so for Aaron. I don't think that's for everyone else, but he is still in the process of trying to figure out what it was that Helen figured out 30 years ago to try and expedite the whole great merger. Because the whole thing is interesting because it's like, oh, we're remaking this world. The fact of the matter is we won't need these bodies is kind of essentially what he was saying. What that means exactly, I don't know. I guess that's why he's not so concerned about his health, because it's like, yeah, my body's breaking down and stuff like that, but in the end, it won't matter. In what way won't it matter? Like, does that mean when they kind of flood this world, all those bodies will disappear and they'll just kind of exist as their own forms? Or even if he dies, like, he'll have accomplished his mission? So is that what he's kind of getting at? I'm curious. Because we still don't 100% know what it means with this merger. Like, obviously, I think it's the simple thing of like all of those creatures from that world bleeding over into this one till there's no humans left, only them, and they unify with the humans. But it's like, is that all there's going to be to them? Like, once they unify with the humans, what happens then? Like, are they going to try and recreate the world that they're running from and trying to make it into this world? Like, oh, we failed with that world, but we get it right this time? Or do they have plans entirely different? Because obviously this isn't just like a what's happening in Rome thing. Rome kind of acts as the centerfold for it all just because it revolves around Kyle. But I'm pretty sure the same thing is kind of implying that it's kind of happening all over the place, because as like I said earlier, it's implying that there's other people like Kyle all over the place too. It makes you wonder how many other people are like Kyle and actually have a family, like who have a child that has the same abilities too. I'm also curious to see what they do about the whole Kyle situation. It's not like you can take him back to the hospital because you can't trust anyone at the hospital. Dr. Park got away, but it's like, yeah, no one want to trust anyone in that part. Don't want to, no one in that hospital. Also, you don't know who to trust, so I guess they're going to have to patch him up on their own. So, but now that the whole Aaron thing has been taken care of, I am curious to see what Sydney does do. because I guess Aaron was kind of like the last, like, maybe it kind of filled some hole in him. Like, hey, like, here's this protege I put so much time and effort in, and you're just kind of like, screw it. It didn't work out. I'll find some other pathway to go down, I guess for him, it wasn't even worth trying to get try to wait for one to go to him, because it's like, it would have meant having Aaron around, and a lot of people kept warning him that Aaron was kind of a loose end, but he wouldn't listen. He saw the potential that Aaron had, and it's just like, oh, like, we can do so much with it. And it turns, maybe there was something else. Maybe he had grown attached to Aaron and just didn't want to let him go. Maybe it's a combination of a little bit of Sydney, as well, a little bit of the thing that's inside of Sydney, but that's kind of all Sydney now. But you get what I'm trying to say? So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what this, like I said, what this all does for Sydney going forward, because now he's kind of stuck alone handling things again. He's also down one person because Evelyn's dead, so she was supposed to be handling a lot of stuff. We know Nunez is controlling things on the police front, so he still has her, but still, we'll have to wait and see where this all takes us in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.